And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a little card game. One that's been printed before, but was recently reprinted, or semi-recently reprinted, under the same name, but this time they've added the word Tactics, and that's Gosu, or Gosu Tactics, which is the second edition of the game. They've made several changes to try and clarify the game, so real quick I'm just going to open the box up. I'm going to tell you how the game plays and show you the components, and then we'll come back here and we'll get my final opinions on this reprint of Gosu. So here you can see the components for Gosu Tactics. Now this is a reprint of the game Gosu with new artwork and some clarified abilities, and so I'll compare them at the end of the video as to how the differences change the game. Now what you can see we get here is we get this advantage card, which is going to simply be the first player marker and break ties. In addition, we'll have these victory point cards. They're the same on both sides, but the goal of the game is to get 3 victory points before any of your opponents. In addition, you're going to have this deck of cards, and in this deck of cards are different types of goblins. There are 5 different factions or color of goblin. This one is green, but for example, this one here is actually a black goblin, and they have different levels, which are printed on the upper right-hand corner. For example, level 1 here, or level 3 for this red goblin that's in my hand right here. In addition, each goblin has abilities printed along the left-hand side in the form of these icons. So they've removed all of the text from the cards, and in addition they've made the cards foily. So if you see me moving it back and forth here and it's shining, that's not just the light, that's the foil on the card. All of the artwork is very well done, and the foils are very nice. Now, at the start of the game, each player is going to have a hand of 10 cards, and they're going to choose 3 of these cards to discard from their hand. I'm going to do this randomly, but you would look through and see what you need, because you're going to need certain cards for prerequisites of other cards. You're going to want to keep the abilities on some of your cards, and so forth and so on. But in this hand of cards, you're going to have different types of goblins. We'll see I have a couple of level 1 red goblins, I have a level 1 blue goblin, a level 2 red goblin, a level 1 black goblin, and some other goblins in my hand. Now after you've done this, the first player is going to go ahead and they're going to start their turn. And on your turn you can do one of 3 things. You can either play a card, you can mutate a card, or you can pass. And once you've passed, you're out of the round entirely. Now your first card that you play must be a level 1 card, and it's going to go on the bottom left-hand side of your tableau. When you play a card, it's going to have some effects on it. So as I said, it must be a level 1, and the first card will be free. But when you play cards, they have effects on them, and this is in the left-hand side here. You can see this icon right by my finger. It shows a little arrow coming into play. And when it comes into play, it has the effects beneath it, which in this case is to let you take another turn. In addition, cards are going to have other abilities. You'll see this one right now by my finger now. It's an arrow. This means when cards come in next to it, and there will be arrows on each side for which the effect takes place. In this case, he actually doesn't have any effects that come into or when cards come into play next to him. But if he did, there would be arrows to his right here, and there'd be one above him, and then of course the one to his left. But cards will never come in beneath a level 1 card. Finally, you'll see some abilities at the bottom that are represented by this icon, the one by my finger now, which is the mutation icon. If you were to mutate this card from one type of goblin to another, by paying 3 cards from your hand, you would get the ability printed beneath it. Now we'll see here that this is a skull, and a skull usually means that you can destroy a level 1 or 2 free card from your opponent. Free simply means that it doesn't have a card to the right of it, and it doesn't have a card above it in your tableau. Now, what this card means, because it has the fire around it, means that you may first swap the position of 2 cards in your opponent's tableau, and then destroy a level 1, 2, or 3 free goblin from their thing. So it makes it a little bit better. Cards with the fire around the icon are simply just upgraded versions of the ability that is usually on the card. So, as my first turn, I would be playing a goblin, and when I play him, he comes into play and lets me play another card. At this point, I have prerequisites on the board. I have a level 1 red goblin, which would allow me to play a level 2 red goblin if I were to have one. So I could search through and see if I do. And I do. I have a level 2 red goblin here. His name is Dynamite. And he has his own set of abilities. So for example, when I play him to the table, I can return a goblin of the same type from the discard pile to my hand, twice, and that's what that icon means. He has no come into play next to him abilities, and he has an ability when I mutate him that lets me take an extra turn. So I could play this guy to the table for no cost. If instead I had wanted to play a level 1 goblin, if it were red, I could play it for free and I would get all of the abilities. So I would simply put it next to him. And all of your rows have 5 imaginary spots in them. So I can have 5 cards in the first row of cards. Level 2, of course, would also have 5 spots. But in order to have a third one of level 2, for example, I would have to have 3 level 1s. And I can only play level 2s that match my level 1s normally. If instead I'd wanted to play a new color of card in the first row, for example, this blue level 1 card, I would have to pay 2 cards from my hand in order to do this. So, playing new colors is going to require you to pay cards from your hand, but in addition, it's going to allow you to play the same color of level 2 cards. So now that I have a level 1 red and a level 2 or level 1 blue, I can go ahead and play a level 2 blue or a level 2 red on one of my future turns. Now, the reason you want bigger goblins is because each goblin has a strength on it. You'll see that this one here has a strength of 2, and that's true for all level 1 goblins. They each have a strength of 2. So your maximum strength in your first row is going to be 10. Each level 2 goblin, we'll take a look at one here, has a strength of 3. So if I were to get a level 2 goblin out, in addition to my 2 level 1s, I would have a strength of 7. Level 3 goblins are going to have strengths of 5, so they're combined a 1 and 2. And the whole idea here is to build up your tableau to have the most strength. However, there are effects that will cause you to flip cards over or remove cards, like the one I showed you that destroys an opponent's card from your tableau. And when you remove these, of course, they no longer contribute their strength. So over your turns, you're trying to build up your tableau and get the most goblins with the most beneficial abilities into play in order to get the highest strength. And of course, once you pass, you're out of the round. Now, as I said, there are other abilities aside from playing things and get the printed abilities. There is a mutation ability, and there's one type of goblin that's particularly good at this. They're called the zombie goblins, and they are black. And when you mutate them, they have a little halo around the mutation icon. So you can see this one right here has a 3. That means instead of playing a card directly from your hand on your turn, if this card is already in play, you may pay 3 cards from your hand in order to mutate it. But these zombie goblins don't only let you mutate into a card from your hand, they also let you search through the discard pile and choose one from there if you would so choose. So they have a little bit more of a selectivity and of course to what they can mutate to. They must always mutate to the same level of zombie, but they can mutate to any different color. And in addition to this, they can mutate to one that you don't meet the prerequisites for. So, for example, if I had the prerequisites for this black and he was out in play, let's just put some cards out here to show it, I could mutate him to a white, even though I don't have the prerequisites in play, in order to get that card's ability, and of course use it to further my position in the game. Anyhow, you're going to keep on in this manner, either playing a card, mutating a card by playing a card from your hand and discarding the appropriate cards for the mutation cost, getting the appropriate abilities, until you decide to pass. When you pass, each other player can take up to 3 more turns, and when they do so, they're of course going to be trying to build up their tableau in order to beat yours. After everyone is done with all of their turns or has passed, you're going to go ahead and you're going to count up the total strength of the goblins in your tableau. So you'd add 2 for each level 1 goblin, 1 for each level 2 goblin, you get 3 for each level 2 goblin, and you'd get 5 for each level 3 goblin. And whoever has the highest total is going to get one of these victory point cards. And they're 1/3 of the way towards winning the game. After this, if you have any flipped over cards that didn't count for your tableau, and these are called locked, they're locked like this, you would flip them back over and they would again start contributing to your tableau, both in the terms of the colors they give you for your prerequisites and in terms of the strength they give you for your overall war strength. In addition, you're going to go ahead and check in how many cards you have left in your hand, and you could have some left over if you passed early and you didn't want to play your cards, or if you simply, weren't able to play your cards in some way, shape, or form, you would have passed the head cards left over. Let's say I had 3. At this point, I would draw back up to 7 cards in my hand, unless I had a victory point. Each player who has victory points is going to draw up to 7 minus the number of victory points they have. So there's a little bit of a mechanic there to prevent a runaway leader. Once this is done, you're going to go ahead and start with the player who has the advantage card, and this advantage card only transfers based on guys that have the take an extra turn ability. Whenever you take an extra turn, you get to take the advantage card, and that makes you the first player. So whoever has this card will start the next round, trying to build their tableau up again. You play on in this manner until one player manages to get 3 victory points, and whoever has 3 victory points first will be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is Gosu Tactics. Now, I think I mentioned in the gameplay area of the video that I had played the base Gosu before. I actually had it for quite some time before I was doing video reviews, and it was a game I enjoyed quite a bit, but had since gotten rid of. And I had a chance to pick up Gosu Tactics recently. I'd heard there had been some changes that were supposed to improve the game, so I decided to check it out. And I have several things to say about this. So first, I love the artwork on the game. They've done a great job of taking the cards. Removing the text, of course, has made the artwork more prominent, and they added the foils, which make it look awesome. Now, removing the text. I'm not sure this was the wisest idea, and I understand that they did it to try and clarify some of the effects of the game. So text sometimes is a little bit less clear than iconography, and iconography leaves less room for interpretation at times, because it's, this icon does this exactly. But the way they've done this makes the game more confusing, in my opinion, having played both editions. Although text may be sometimes unclear in the wording, it does allow for more room on clarifying issues if there needs to be something clarified. Whereas an icon, you either have to add more icons, or you have to, even add text to clarify the icons, and sometimes just straight iconography is not enough. So I think that was probably a poor choice on their part there. Even though it does make, the interactions a little bit more simple, it certainly makes it a little bit more confusing in cases if you do have a question. So that's a problem. Aside from that, I still enjoy the gameplay of Gosu. I think it's quite a fun game. It kind of has a tableau building mixed with a little bit of the interactions that are kind of in Magic the Gathering. So if you're a fan of Magic, it has a little bit of that feel to it. But overall, there's a lot of fiddliness to the game. I mean, if you're looking for something that doesn't have any fiddliness, you're not going to find it in Gosu. You're trying to make sure that your cards interact with other cards. By playing cards, you're trying to get more turns or to get more effects by using the comes into play next to effects. In addition, there are a couple of endgame conditions that I didn't cover. There's one where if you manage to get all of the 15 cards in your tableau, the first person to do that automatically wins the game. So there's an additional nice finishing touch there. If you can just kind of race to the end, you don't have to worry about the effects so much. Just get all the cards into play you can. Or if you manage to get 9 of the same faction of Goblin that's the same color into play, you automatically win the game. So there are different areas you can focus on aside from just getting the most victory points. If you can race to one of those two conditions, you can win the game in another manner. Anyhow, overall I like Gosu. I think I'd actually suggest for players who are newer to this type of game that they take a look at the first edition and maybe use some of the rules clarifications in this edition to modify that edition, but having the text is a nice touch. Overall, better art in this edition, but I think better gameplay in the first printing. So check it out. That's Gosu or Gosu Tactics, whichever one you prefer.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.